We're back for part 2 of our trip down Route 166, the other Route 66 that a lot of people don't know about. Part 1, we went from the border with Missouri over to Coffeyville, which is where we're starting today. That was about 60 miles in actual distance, although we went north and south a little bit and covered a little bit more. Today, there's about 100 miles, so it's longer today. And it'll be interesting to see what we find. The actual length from start to finish of Route 166 is 164 miles. Would have been nice if they just extended it 2 more miles to make it 166, but it's 164. So a little bit over 60 yesterday, about 100 today. Let's get on the road. Just like yesterday, we're gonna take detours north and south of 166. And this first stop is actually north a couple miles, but technically it has a Coffeyville address. It's a historic chapel. Coffeyville, there's a lot more, certainly, with a town/city of 9,000 people than what I showed. I tried to show a couple of the more interesting historical old Wild West stuff. It's also very windy today, so I'll probably be doing most of the commentary here inside my car. It's one of those typical southern Kansas/northern Oklahoma sunny and really windy days. On my way back to 166, I decided to stop off in the small town of Deering. It was established in 1888 and has always had between 250 to 500 people. Some nice old buildings in the downtown area to check out, so glad I stopped on my way back to 166. Next town is Tyro, and it was named from the English word Tyro, which means beginner or novice. It was started in 1886 when the Denver, Memphis, and Atlantic Railroad was extended to this area, and had a nice population in the early 1900s, and then by 1930 dropped quite a bit and held steady until the last census, actually, when it went down to 177. Next up is Caney, Kansas. And Caney was founded in 1869 and really didn't grow until the early 1900s, even though the railroad had come through in 1887. But it really grew in the early 1900s because it was associated with the petroleum industry. In 1909, Caney became the site of the original Canotech's refining company, and the population shot up from just under 1,000 to over 3,000 pretty quickly. Population has always been over a couple thousand until the last census, which was 1,788. Lots of great historic buildings in the downtown area. Very interesting town to visit. I saw this building driving along the road and thought maybe it was an old school, and then found out it was the Peru Brick Company, and there's all kinds of different buildings on this property. It's all private property now, but it was active from about 1900 to 1930, and then it was bought, and it has just been on private property from that point on. So pretty interesting. And right next to that is the town of Peru. This was started in 1870. It was named after the president of the town company's hometown, Peru, Illinois. Population peaked around 1930, like some of these other towns, over 600 people, and now only has 101. Fun fact is Barack Obama's maternal grandmother was born here in Peru. Lots of old and abandoned buildings, pretty cool place to stop and check out. We're about halfway through the day, so I thought I'd get a little short little walk out. The Butcher Falls is only about 2 miles north of 166, so figure we might as well go check it out. Right off US 166, I found the Grant Creek Cemetery, and probably looks just like an ordinary cemetery along the road, but once I started walking around, I noticed everything was from about 1870 to 1890, and some really interesting looking headstones like that. Definitely a cool place to stop and check out if you like cemeteries. And just a little bit further down the road is I'd say, unique roadside attraction here in Kansas. This is called the Chautauqua Gemstone, and this is a large rock of sandstone, weighs about 140 tons, and was unearthed when they were making US Highway 166 here. And so the locals decided to try to make it a little tourist stop and stood it up, and yeah, it's a pretty cool place to stop and check out. Our next incorporated town is Cedar, Vale, and it was founded in 1870. It was pretty small when it was founded, but then it did grow and hit 1,000 people in the early 1900s and was able to maintain that population for several decades. And then not until 1960 did the town start getting smaller and has lost over half its population down to 476 today. The downtown area does have quite a few interesting old buildings, and so it's definitely a place to stop off and check out if you're driving down 166. close to the end of 166, and the last big town, or maybe small city, you might call it, is Ark City, and it's spelled like the word Arkansas, but if you're not familiar with this part of the country, they pronounce it Arkansas, the Arkansas River, Arkansas City, but they just shorten it to Ark City. Biggest town on 166, 11,000 people. So I'll show you a few of the nice places or the old buildings, and we won't spend too much time here, as we enjoy on this channel the smaller and tiniest towns and dots. So we're gonna keep trying to find all those before the sun sets and we get to our final destination here on the western side of 166. Ark City was established as a town in 1870. They had a lot of different names they were trying to figure out. They almost named it Adelphia, Creswell, and Walnut City before Arkansas City was officially chosen in 1870. 1877, the railroad came through. They had a couple different railroads, and it really grew in the late 1800s to a population of over 8,000. And in 1891, a lot of people moved into this area in anticipation of the Cherokee Strip land run in Oklahoma. In fact, it kind of rivaled Wichita in size and how many businesses there were. There was an opera house, lots of hotels, manufacturing, agricultural economy. So it was quite the growing city. And then it just kind of stalled out there in the early 1900s, but has remained about that same size until today. It would be hard to imagine to find a place with more red brick than Ark City. Maybe somewhere that's bigger, but for a town of 11,000 people, most of the side streets have red brick in them. So it's kind of amazing to drive around. Almost everywhere you go, you're driving on brick, except for kind of right down the main street. So yeah, it's pretty awesome for fans of the old red brick roads. A short detour about a mile north of 166 brought me to the Lalek Cemetery, and just a real small little cemetery with a Danish heritage and some really interesting headstones. As we head west, a couple of ghost towns, Ashton and Portland. And these were both railroad towns established in the 1880s. First here is Ashton, and it had a post office from 1887 till 1971. So it had a pretty long life. There's a old school and different angle of the school, and there's several of these old buildings to check out in Ashton, including this church, which is getting abandoned in those trees, and the roof has caved in, so definitely has seen better days. Then over to Portland, and this had a post office from 1886 until 1940, and once again you can see the evidence of it being on the railroad here. And then there was a school, Gulf Township School was here, and there it is. So pretty interesting to see these old towns. See there, this was the end of 166, the town of South Haven, Kansas. It was founded in 1872, named after the town of South Haven, Michigan. Railroad came through in 1879. The town grew to a little over 400 people and has really pretty much maintained that same population all the way till today. Here on the main street of South Haven, much busier than you might think for only 300 people. Cars driving by all the time. But yeah, that's the end of the trip. 166 ends here. In fact, 177 also ends here as it's coming up from Oklahoma. So this is the end point for two of the interesting, U.S. routes. What did you think of US 166? It reminded me a lot of Route 66 in a lot of ways. A lot of small towns, a couple cities here and there, some pretty historical places. It would be, I think, great for it to be documented and maybe, advertised a little bit more, than it is. So I really had fun. Thanks for watching this video about US Highway 166 in Kansas. If you like this video, there are several ways to support the channel. You can donate by hitting the thanks button under the video or purchase Travel with a Wiseguy merchandise. In the description of this video is a link to my website where you can learn more about my channel and sign up for the newsletter. And if you aren't interested in any of that, I'm just happy that you took a few minutes out of your day to watch this video and learn about US Highway 166. Thank you very much, and now on to the outtakes. Just ate. That'd be embarrassing to have a bunch of food in your mouth when you're trying to talk about Coffeyville, Kansas. I was sitting here filming my last little segment, and somebody drove up and said, "Is this going to be a Wiseguy post?" Turns out he was a former Wichita State track athlete that knew who I was by track, not by YouTube. So yeah, still makes me uncomfortable though.